Okay, it's a pleasure to be here, and for those of you who've seen this this dog and pony show before, I actually have new pictures this year. So I think I'll do this the old way and push buttons on the keyboard. So this is the brief agenda. We'll do a lot of background. In fact, you know, since Helen showed a few of the slides, I'll try to skip over some of those, but they're more at the end of this presentation. What I really want to do is talk through how we got to generating the Thesaurus map that Helen showed, some of the failed attempts along the way, and then finally how we got to the map that seemed to work pretty well, and then show a bunch of really quick overlays based on that. So we tried to map the Thesaurus directly. Didn't work very well. Then we mapped it indirectly, but I'll get to that in a moment. So this background here is very similar to the types of things that you've heard from both of our previous PLoS speakers, and just in general. So the idea behind visualizing things or generating big spreadsheets or however we want to look at and analyze these data are to try to answer different classes of questions. And these can be things like, where's our coverage thin, where might it be dense, where are our core areas, what are areas we might expand into, what's growing generally, how might we want to tap into that, how are things interrelated in ways that we might not think of right away, and which fields have low activity but are related to other active fields. And something that comes up is that if you're looking for contextual answers to questions like this, your own data might not be enough. You might need a broader data source that allows you to place your results in the context of a greater whole. It depends on what your questions are. Oftentimes your data is absolutely all you need to be able to get the answers you want. But sometimes you might want a broader view. Okay. Generating a map, it allows you a visual picture of something that is a template upon which you can display other results. And that's what Helen was showing when you saw the kind of the shaded out version of a map underneath, and then a brighter version of things over the top with different shapes, or not different shapes, but different sizes of circles. So those are overlays on top of a template. So what we wanted to do was generate a template that would represent the PLoS Thesaurus. Okay, so you've also seen this. This is just telling you what the data looked like. 10 top level terms now. There was 11 when we were looking at things. I didn't see places and people in the...
Which one that came in. I think this was +3.
Okay, so 11 top terms, 296 second level terms, lots and lots of data records. To provide the context, we used Scopus data. And so we used about 25 million records covering 16 years. And so that gives you the context of a large majority of things that are being published. It's by no means all of it, but it's a pretty broad cut through the scientific literature. So here's one picture that I don't know that you've seen before. If you look at the PLoS Thesaurus simply as a function of its hierarchical structure, this is what it looks like. So you've got the top level term for biology, top level term for computer science, earth science, and so on. So we've got our 11 top level terms, and then there's a line going to each second level term, and so on. So you can see immediately that the thesaurus is this deep overall, but that it has different depths and different breadths in different parts of the thesaurus. And so we've colored this by top level term, and I agree, this is a pretty lousy green up here on screen. It's much better on the monitor. Now the black is, you talked about polyhierarchical structure. All of the lines that are black are a representation of that polyhierarchical structure. What that means is that chunk of the tree exists in more than one place within the thesaurus. So everything that's colored not black has only one spot in the thesaurus. Everything that's colored black, it's copied somewhere else within that structure. So this is one way. We could use this as a visualization template to display things about the thesaurus. The thing that gets hard is when you get down into this level of the structure, you can't tell your leaves apart. So from a visualization perspective, it's a little bit hard to see things at that level. So science mapping, in general, what is it? It goes by different names. Sometimes it's called domain mapping or knowledge domain visualization. Things like that all refer to something that we talk about as science mapping. But essentially what we're trying to do is generate a visual picture of the relationships within some sort of a structure. And that could be a classification system, it could be a corpus of some set of documents, it could be a taxonomy. It can be used for lots of different things. Essentially, if you can draw, or if you can say that there's a relationship between the objects in whatever thing you're trying to look at, then you can create a visual map of it. Okay, and I'll show you at the very end a map of something that's totally different, but it ends up having similar characteristics. So science maps have been created of all these types of things. It's been done for 40 years. It started off at ISI with Henry Small. And I have to say this again, Henry works with us now. It's great fun. And he comes up with as many great ideas as he always did. Henry was chief scientist at Thomson Scientific for a number of years and was the inventor of co-citation analysis. So maps are used to do these types of things. More often than not, they don't answer questions. They give you a visual perspective that allows you to refine your questions or to generate hypotheses, and then what you do is go dive into the data to find the answers. So the general process for creating a science map, you select your data source and the objects that you want to have comprise that map. And then you calculate some measure of similarity between those objects. And then you create a visual layout of that map, or of clusters of documents, clusters of items. So that's the general process. Our first attempt to try to map the PLoS Thesaurus was to do a direct mapping. It's okay, here's the terms. We know that we've indexed all of these documents and we have the lists of terms for each document. Let's do a co-term type of analysis. And if these two terms are going to be similar based on how many documents they were referenced in or in common, okay? So if 10 documents had these same two terms as two of their thesaurus terms, then they're related with a strength of 10. Then you normalize that. The thing that's hard about that is you have some terms that appear 5,000 times and other terms that appear once or twice. And so when you've got a distribution that is so broad in that sense, when the tail is much smaller than the highest thing, then it's hard to come up. You're going to be generating a map where you've got a bunch of little tiny things and a few really big things, and the mathematics make it very difficult because relating big things and small things just is kind of a hard thing to do. But we thought, okay, let's give this a try. We've tried it before, maybe we'll have better results this time. So the first thing we did is we rolled all the terms up to the second level and said, let's just map that second level. There's about 300 terms there. So everything that was underneath that, we rolled all of those counts up to that second level and then did this co-term type of analysis, created the map. We colored the terms as you saw in that hierarchical map. And this is the picture we got. Now this isn't all that bad. This is an interesting picture. What you see is, there's kind of a concentration of the biology terms, the big green ones over there, and you've got some of the medical terms here, and you have a scattering of other things. But the thing that's difficult about this is even at the second level, you can see you've got some huge groupings of terms, and then others that are just tiny. Okay, it's real. It's a true representation of the thesaurus. But this kind of a mapping doesn't let us get to the fine-grained level where you want to do the analysis. The other thing is that if you look at the green terms, they are a little more spread out than you might want them to be. Because if that's your biology and life sciences, I was hoping things would be a little more closely packed in biology and life sciences. But we have things clear down here, and things up here, and things over here. So they're spread out all over the place. Okay, well, let's try again. And we did some other things where we mapped more of the terms, but it turns out that you get some thresholding effects, and we were only really accounting for about 40% of the thesaurus counts, if you want to talk about things that way. And so we weren't getting the picture we wanted. So we went back to an idea that we kind of thought, oh, well, we'll try that someday. And this idea was to, instead of just using the term structure of the thesaurus itself, I have such a hard time saying that word. Maybe I'm the only one.
I think that's why people say taxonomy.
Taxonomy, that's much easier than a... So we decided to index Scopus data using the PLoS rule base. So now we're going to take titles and abstracts from PLoS, 25 million records, and we'll index that whole thing and look at what that gives us. That'll give us counts across all of science, not just PLoS, and we can get a nice big contextual picture. And then let's try the simplest thing possible. Let's triangulate the term positions on a map that we already have. Because we have a map of these 25 million Scopus records. Why don't we just take and say, oh, this term appears in all of these documents. We know where those documents are. Let's just take the average position of all of those documents and let's slap that term down right there on the map and see what happens. And okay, so this was our Scopus map. Now this big gray thing in the middle was patents, but we just ignored the fact that that was there. All right, so we triangulated these things, and this is what we got. And I looked at that and I said, oh my goodness, that's something I can work with, because I know what this map means. I've dug around this thing, and so I know that all of these pink things are computer science and electrical engineering. I know that the purple at the top is physics, the blue is chemistry. I know all these reds and oranges are related to medical in some way or another. The light orange over here is computer science, and so on. Yes?
I just want to mention for the people that are interested in patents that we have the patents overlaid on Scopus, and if you wanted to compare your data to the world of science and patents, this would be the base map.
This would be a good way to do it. Although I think we'll probably end up with another base map before long that will be even better. And I'll show you that right at the end, even though it's not really, but it's just too cool not to say anything about it. But so you can see we triangulated things, and all of the purples, all the physical sciences are over in here, in the physics and chemistry areas, right? Okay, that makes sense to me. And all of the biology and life science terms are in here, right where all the biology papers in our map were. And all the medicines here, and all the so I looked at this and I said, oh, that makes sense to me. I can read that map. And things are spread out. They're kind of in the circle that I normally have come to associate with all of the scientific literature. Okay. Now, each one of these circles now, the size of the circle is based on the number of times that term appears when indexing Scopus. So this is a broader context. This is not PLoS. It's the PLoS thesaurus, but used to represent Scopus data. So it's much broader. Okay, it's a very, very large, broad slice of everything that's being published. And as Helen mentioned, you've got lots of little circles down here, so the terms are finely differentiated. You've got lots of big circles up here where PLoS isn't worrying that much about the publications right now. And so you've got terms that haven't been broken into smaller pieces. Okay, what do we do with this now? Well, why don't I throw away the map underneath? I don't need it anymore, because now I can represent all of Scopus, or all of PLoS, or all of anything else using PLoS's rule base, using PLoS's thesaurus. So this now is my template. This is my thesaurus taxonomy, base map. Okay? What can we do with this now that we've got this picture? And I should mention, this type of process can be applied to anything that would be Scopus data could be indexed using any other rule base. And then a map of whatever that rule base is could be made, just like this. The process is transparent. Question?
You explained what the size of the nuts is, but is there anything other than convenience to their XY position?
It's just XY position and size.
But the XY position just means that we'll put all the methods here and all that.
Well, what it is, okay, so for that term, let's say that term appeared in 500 Scopus documents. I know where the Scopus documents are. I just averaged those 500 positions and put the term there. So it's an average position based on the entire.
Those 5
Yes.
positions.
And that's why they end up in the spots they are. So each one of them is an averaged position. Okay. Okay, so what kinds of things can we do with this now that we have it? Well, I want to make a point here. And that is that, yeah, we've got the pretty picture, but the visualizations are the last step in the process. The visualizations are all based on tabular data that's either sitting in a spreadsheet or in a SQL database somewhere. So all of those things that you can see on the map map back to numbers that are sitting in a database. That all kinds of analysis can be done on those numbers. That's where the answers typically come from. We look at the visual, get an idea of what we want to do, and then we go back to the numbers, which is what you guys have been doing. Okay, and the detailed analysis helps us get there. But the pictures help us formulate questions. So for instance, let's look just at the terms in the biology and life sciences area of the Thesaurus. Well, this is interesting. I understand all of this over here, and I think I even understand some of these terms being over here because there's quite an intersection between the social sciences and the biological life sciences when you get into the social aspects of the questions that are being asked, into the ethics and all of those types of things. So I kind of expect some of this. But what are these terms that are showing up in my natural sciences areas? Why are they there? That we can answer those questions, or at least we can ask those questions by looking at this. So there's a term, circuit models, up there. Well, that term means something completely different in electrical engineering and in computer science than it does in biology. Now, does PLoS care about that? Well, since right now they're not taking many papers in computer science and electrical engineering, maybe that's not a problem, because this is showing where that term loads based on all of Scopus. But if we were to only look at the PLoS instances of that term is going to be down here. Okay? And there are others. But this allows PLoS now to look at particular terms and one by one look at the future and say, is this something where we want to split this term or add additional things into our rule base to make it more clear for our particular applications? So chromatin immunoprecipitation, evolutionary modeling. I'm just showing a few of these things that allows you to go look at particular terms and just realize that they may have a different meaning in another area of science, and then decide whether we want to do anything about it or not. We can do similar types of things with all these other areas. So at this point, I'm going to hit my advanced key and just show a variety of pictures where the different portions of of taxonomy distribute across the map. And I think Helen made the point earlier that when you get to the methods, they're all over. And that makes sense. It really does make sense. I put these three together because social sciences, science policy, and the people and places tended to aggregate pretty closely together on the map. So I showed all three of those on one slide. Okay, so you've already seen some of this as well. We can do the time histories similar to what Helen showed earlier. But if we take PLoS, all journals and all years, this is what the distribution looks like. So, for instance, you can see that compared to science as a whole in Scopus, PLoS is only getting that much in terms of papers loading on that term. Okay? So you've got a big circle underneath, which means there's a lot of it out in the rest of the world, but only a little bit in PLoS. Whereas down here you have, you've got, if we could look underneath, you'd see that the circle from Scopus here would be smaller than this one. So proportionately, PLoS has got a higher than average chunk of science related to that term in their journals. So if we go back to 2008 and then just, this is all journals, but it's so dominated by PLoS 1 that it's not going to be really any different than what Helen showed you. So you can see the growth and shift over the years. 2011 to 2012, huge jump in the medical stuff, which it kind of stayed at those levels at 2013. Now, if we want to look at the different journals, we can do that as well. So PLoS Biology, this is all years combined. You can see it's not just one little thing. It's pretty much covering that whole biology area. If we go to computational biology, it's a little different mix. You're getting computer science things up in here as well. Now, if we look at PLoS genetics, it's again a different focus just based on the terms. PLoS medicine, you can see, is a totally different distribution over to the left. Neglected tropical diseases, you can see down there at the bottom right. And if we go to pathogens, which is similar but not quite the same, you'll see that they're in generally the same area, but there's a different distribution if I toggle this back and forth. Okay? And then, of course, PLoS 1 is the entire bottom half of the map. Okay, and we've already seen this, so I'll scroll through it really quickly. All right. So now let's look at some other journals, just to get a flavor of what things are like. So being somebody who, I've actually got a couple of papers in PLoS 1, and I've got my own views on PLoS 1 and what their strategy might be, which probably have nothing to do with what the real strategy is. But you know, as somebody who has done a lot of bibliometrics research and looked at different journals for different questions and reasons, I've always thought that PLoS 1 was targeting Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. To me, that's the template. Okay, I don't know if you, but to me that's what PLoS 1 seems to be aimed at, is to compete with PNAS. Okay, that's from a total outsider's perspective. So let's just see how close, you know, that might be from a visual perspective. So here's the PLoS 1 distribution. Now let's look at PNAS. Well, in the biology area, they're pretty close. As I toggle back and forth, you'll see that PLoS 1 has a heck of a lot more medicine than PNAS. And PNAS has more in the natural sciences. A lot more chemistry, if we were to call it chemistry. So that's really the difference. So the core biology is about the same. PLoS 1, more into medicine. PNAS, more into chemistry, a little bit into physics. Okay, now I ask the question, what if PLoS wanted to expand? What if they wanted to put journals in different areas? Might happen someday. Of course, with as fast as things are accelerating, maybe the idea is just to ride what they've got for a while. But if they did, what are the profiles of some other journals that might be potential competitors for a PLoS type journal? So let's look at the Journal of the American Chemical Society. Now that's interesting. You've got all of this chemistry over here, but JAX has a surprising amount of stuff in biology and life sciences. Well, okay, biochemistry, that would make sense, right? Well, let's look at Journal of Materials Chemistry. Okay, that's the profile for the Journal of Materials Chemistry. Here's PRL. You know, extremely heavy up in the physics area. Here's Journal of Nanoscience and Nanotechnology. Now, I should have put this next to the Journal of Materials Chemistry, because if I back up 2, you'll see that those two profiles are very similar. So Journal of Materials Chemistry, Journal of Nanoscience and Nanotechnology, very similar. And then something that's kind of really on the outskirts. How about lecture notes in computer science, which really isn't a journal. It's kind of a conference/book series. But you can see where lecture notes in computer science has their profile. It's just interesting to be able to do these types of, once you've seen the pictures, they kind of stick in your head, and you've got some hypotheses that are formed in your head as to what different things might look like. Of course, the numbers would bear some of those things out or allow deeper dive into the particular characteristics. Okay, so a quick summary, and then I'm going to show you a couple of other pictures, and then I'll quit. Mapping the PLoS Thesaurus directly gave maps that were really only partially useful. The indirect mapping, the triangulation based on Scopus data, at least for me, produced a gorgeous and very usable map of the structure. And that could be then used as its own template. That's a map that PLoS can use going forward. And things, once again, are based on tabular data. So there's underlying numbers for everything. All right, so I want to show you two brand new maps. Papers for both of these are currently under review. So the first one is what we're calling a non-source map. So over here at the left is a map that I probably showed you last year. And that's a map that is based on Scopus data from 1996 to 2011. It's a version of the map that did not have patents in it, so there's no gray. And so that's about 20 million documents, and you can see where the social sciences are over here. And so I mentioned last year that we really wanted to map more social sciences data to see what would happen to the map once, because we all know that social sciences and humanities are underrepresented in databases such as Scopus and the Web of Science. So this year we thought, you know, it'd be really interesting, since we have the cited references from the Scopus data, and we've got a way to resolve those to a large degree, why don't we include the non-source items in our map? Everything that's cited at least twice. Let's include that in the map and see what happens. So this map over here, it's got 43 million documents in it. So we more than doubled our coverage. Now it turns out that that doubling isn't uniform across all areas of science. It less than doubles in medicine. It less than doubles in chemistry. Quadruples in the social sciences. The other thing that is fascinating is, look where the social sciences are in this map, okay? Over here at the left. Well, they're still over here at the left in this map, but what happened? They grew and they expanded into the middle of the map, okay? So when you add all of that non-source stuff in, the social sciences are far more central to science as a whole than the picture you get if you don't use all that other stuff. Yes, Helen?
I'm having a little hard time understanding what the non-source items are.
Okay.
There are things that are cited twice, but not source items.
Correct.
So if a source item was cited twice, you throw that out.
No. Source items we keep, but we add in all non-source items that are cited twice. Okay, so if there's a source item in the 1996 to 1998, or sorry, 2011 portion of the data, and that's only cited once, it's still in there. For a couple of reasons. One is that it's cited, but secondly, it may have 30 references and it cites other things, so it's in there. The non-source items are things where Scopus does not have cited references for them. So, for instance, a document published in 1994, Scopus doesn't index the references for that information. The Web of Science does, but Scopus got into the game late, and they made the decision to not go back. They do index the older stuff, but they don't index the references. So anything prior to 1996, they index from a variety of sources, but not the cited references. So we decided, okay, all of those things that are cited at least twice where we can resolve that item, let's include it in the map. Now, the one thing, and I'll throw out a number that's just fascinating to me. Of these 43 million items, 7 million of them are additional documents between 1996 and 2011 that don't appear in the Scopus database. So those are, for instance, regional journals, or books, or even some newspaper articles, or government reports. There are all of these other things that are cited, and they're recent, but they're not sourced by Scopus or by the Web of Science. So adding those things in makes a big difference in the map. It can make a big difference from an evaluation perspective, certainly makes a difference from a structural perspective.
And you would expect that it would make a bigger difference to social sciences because of books.
Yes, and so you're, this is the next picture that I added. Where are the books? And so instead of, you know, so I've made sectors, and this is kind of hard to see, but the books are very prevalent in the social sciences. They're even prevalent in the computer sciences. There are books everywhere, okay? But they're especially prevalent in the social sciences, in some of the, in clinical areas such as nursing, health services. There's a lot of them in the computer sciences, but when you get over here into the chemistry and physics and biology, some areas of biology have a lot of books, but everything over here, the fraction of what's sourced, or the fraction of what's cited, there's far less books than there are over here on this half of the map.
Conference proceedings.
Scopus actually indexes far more conference proceedings and ties them in than Web of Science does. It's very hard in the non-source to differentiate a proceedings from a journal. So we haven't gotten that far. But the books are important, and the other thing that I haven't mentioned on the slide, but that I'll just say, is that the average citation rate to the books is anywhere from 2.5 to 5 times higher than it is to articles, depending on the field of science. But in all areas of science, it's at least 2.5 times as high. So the books are extremely important. Okay, last picture. I mentioned that you can map just about anything if you have a way to calculate how strong the relationship is between the things that you're referencing. This is a map of altruism. And what we did here is we used data from GuideStar, which is, it's a nonprofit organization that compiles data, a lot of IRS data and so on, but they get a lot of data about nonprofit organizations here in the United States. And so we were able to get data from them. We got financial data. We also got web domain names. And so this map, there's almost 100,000 dots on this map. Each one represents a separate nonprofit organization here in the United States. And the map is based on the content, the mission-related content in their websites. So we used a combination of topic modeling, which is a natural language-based technique using Gibbs sampling. Anyhow, there's a lot that went into this map. I'm showing you an overlay which shows 100,000 separate nonprofits. But when you look at the features of the map, what you have is youth programs and sports-related programs over here. All of your arts and culture, symphonies, theater, museums, all of that kind of thing. They're all up in here. Educational things are all here. Religious organizations and missionary activities and all of that are over there. This is all related to health. And this is all kind of community citizenship types of things. It includes chambers of commerce. It includes innovation think tanks. It includes, international studies types of organizations and so on. But it's fascinating that you can classify the world of nonprofits in a way like this. And so we're working with GuideStar and others to see where we can go with this. And the reason this is important to the types of things that we're all doing is that we're dealing with publishing and often with science and technology. Well, research and development in the United States is about $450 billion a year. The revenues to nonprofit organizations are 6 times that on an annual basis. And we don't know what's going on there. Okay? Now, the other thing, and I don't have this picture for you, but not a lot, but some number of these nonprofits are specifically aimed at science and technology and research. They're all in this half of the map. Okay? There are altruistic reasons that are behind the types of things that we're all doing. And my question is, how do we apply that type of thinking to the rest of this? That there's a lot of money going into those areas of facets of our lives, but it's kind of maintenance. It's day to day. How do we take some of that? How do we influence the use of some of that to improve in a scientific way all of the rest of this? You know, in some ways I look at this and I say, this to me is a picture of the well-rounded person. Okay? And I think it's just fascinating that we can look at the world in this way, and there's huge intersections with science and technology and with funding sources. So anyhow, that's it. You can map just about anything if you have the data and make pretty pictures.